Now we're going to move to someone who started off actually as a client of mine. And then from there, it became a nice relationship, working relationship to where it was consulting, friendship. You know, now I look at him as my mentor in many ways, because this guy is an internet genius. And I want to I'm asking him to come so he can share sort of what Clayton has meant to him, even though there wasn't necessarily a close friendship, but to see the power of Clayton Makepeace. So ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to not introduce you to, you all probably should know him, but let me at least acknowledge Mr. Caleb O'Dowd.
Thank you very much. It is a great honor and a privilege to be here. As Carline said, I actually never had a personal relationship with Clayton at all, but I was most certainly one of his most relentless unknown students. I studied him for years. Who was Clayton to me? He was a guy who essentially stepped into my industry, which was full of really hardcore guys, real savvy, experienced advertisers, direct mail copywriters, hardcore direct mail guys who had been playing this game for a very long time and were very good at it. And Clayton came along and just out of nowhere burst open the door and like threw his feet up on the table and started ruling the roost from the get-go. It was the most impressive thing I've ever seen. He and some of us here have spoken about this package, but there was a package, the 23-cent lifesaver heart doctors never tell you about. That was like a piece of alien technology when it came about. Like, you have no idea how far advanced that package was in comparison to everything else that was out there. It took a long time just to even understand what was going on in that package. And within a very short period of time, every direct mail package that went out the door looked like that package. And still to this day, the entire offer structure that was laid down by Clayton in that package is still the way that 95% of all offer structures are laid out in the health supplement direct mail industry. He was so perfect at every area of the game. You know, he was so good at every last aspect of what it took to be a truly A-level guy. And in my mind, he was even a step above the A-level guys. He was an alchemist. He knew the game in a way that very few people knew the game. And everything about what he did was cutting edge. You know, even his concept of dominant emotions, that's a massive thing for everyone to understand. There is a core emotion driving action in the marketplace, and there's a variety of different ways to capture people's attention. One of them is to appeal to what's interesting to them. Another one is to target them via their problems. And what Clayton would do is he would mix those two together, but he would also mix it with a dominant emotion headline, because Clayton knew that you can capture, you know, people's interest. You can only capture so much interest by targeting problems and targeting interests. If you want to have the maximum reach into your audience, if you want to resonate most powerfully with the largest quantity of people, you need to be targeting those people emotionally, because that, when you can hit a deep emotional trigger, you can capture people. You capture the widest quantity of people in the deepest and most impactful way. And the one thing that I really take away, the one massive overarching lesson that I take away from what Clayton had to share with me, because there was so much, every last element of what this guy did in his sales copy was so advanced, so high tech, so cutting edge. But the one thing that really stood out for me and really had the biggest impact in my particular game and my career was I got my eyes blown wide open to just how much Clayton got to know his prospect. I had never seen anyone get to that level of depth. If you guys study what's it called, the Invest Without Fear package, oh my God, oh my God. Like, look at the first 2 pages of that. The first 2 pages, will knock your socks off. He practically knew every single thing about the prospect, bar what they ate for breakfast in the morning. And as a result, the copy instantaneously, it's you-based copy. It instantly puts the person in a place where they're swept off their feet, and everything they're reading is exactly how they think, how they feel, what's going on in their world. And it's so impressive to see someone do that. It just made me realize that, oh my gosh, I'm not even scratching the surface of what is needed in order to really research your prospect and understand what's going on in that person's world. Because if you truly deeply understand everything there is to know in order to make a sale about a prospect, everything about the writing process becomes easier. The words you start to use, the language you start to use, the arguments that you start to present in your sales message, all of those things are landing like lightning in the hearts and souls of the people that is reading it, because it's all about them. And that, to me, just really changed the game for me. It changed the focus of away from copywriting and put it more on the research phase. Gary Bencivenga is here, someone that I have relentlessly studied as well. And he says it beautifully. The game is won in research. The game is won in research. And Clayton was an absolute master of that. And what I took away from him more so than anything, because there was so much to take away from him, what I took away from him was, hey, there's a whole other level here of researching the prospect that, if I can wrap my head around that, if I can become really good about that, if I can become really good at that, it's not going to be a small improvement in my game. It's not going to be a small improvement in conversion. It's going to be transformational. And everything that Clayton was an example of to me, what he was an example of to me, was a master of the fundamentals. And every truly legendary person at any game, this game, a sport, whatever, anyone who achieves true legendary status is someone who puts a great deal of their time, the vast majority of their time, into understanding what the fundamentals are and then mastering the fundamentals, because it's the fundamentals that are essentially going to result in the biggest successes that you will have. Mastering the fundamentals in this manner is what's going to lead to the biggest successes of your career. And Clayton, to me, was that. He was essentially someone who mastered the fundamentals, and the one that stood out to me more so than anything was just his prospect. So I think I just want to kind of also say that I spent years, when Clayton first came up on my radar, I was living in Costa Rica, and I had a spare room in my home, and I would print out, there were several magalogs that I would print out of his, and I would tape them to the wall, one page on top of the other, on top of the other. And I spent not weeks, not months, I spent years doing that. I lived there for 1.5 years, and by the time it was done, I had to repaint the paint on the wall. I had to repaint it for the guy who owned the apartment, because it was just tape pulling all the paint off the wall. But I studied him for years, and there is years worth of mentorship and coaching and education to be had in reverse engineering Clayton Makepeace packages. He is one of the best people to study and learn, because it is easy to, he's just a master of tactics and strategies and fundamentals. There's a lot of people who are really very good but are difficult to learn from. Clayton is very easy to learn from, and there's years, I honest to God, hand on my heart, I spent years researching him. I spent years reverse engineering his stuff. I spent years breaking down his paragraphs, mimicking his case studies, mimicking his proof elements, mimicking his headlines, and handwriting out his stuff. The guy is an absolute genius. And I guess my closing message to everybody is, if you really want to take your game to a next level, you should study his packages relentlessly. And there's years of education there. And that was who Clayton was to me. That's the impact he had on my life. And I'm very, very happy to be part of a tribute to him. I think that he is part of a dying breed of true alchemists and should be celebrated for the magnificent legacy that he left behind and the work that he did.
Caleb, that was absolutely awesome. Like, I know you're respecting my mom, but I'm jumping in right now. But that was just awesome. Fantastic. Your lesson about targeting your readers' dominant emotions to really get to know your prospect and using their words to speak to them. It's just valuable and priceless information that everyone can take away and put into practice, no matter at what stage you are in your writing. And I do think we're all going to probably sticky note or tape on our wall, the game is won in research. The game is won in research, you know, as we're writing the next package or project. So thank you so much for coming today and being a part of this. It just made it very special as well.
Thank you. Cheers.